Enderman Slayer, healing, dungeons, Kudra, mini-bosses, zealots, even fishing. They were just a select few usages of many more uses for Hyperion. After all, with the Hyperion being one of the most versatile weapons on the game, it can be used for pretty much anything and everything. However, there's one fundamental problem. With the price of the Hyperion being close to 2.5 billion coins, of course obtaining this item is going to be quite problematic for a lot of players. Now, it's no secret that this weapon locks a lot of content. And what I mean by that is basically if you don't have this weapon, you're going to be unable to do quite a lot of things within Skyblock. For example, Kudra, even to do a tier 1 or a tier 2, you're going to really struggle without Hyperion. Now hear me out. Now of course, you can do a Kudra without Hyperion, you can essentially just be a passenger. Getting supplies doesn't require Hyperion, building the blister doesn't really require a Hyperion, and also then collecting fuel cells doesn't require a Hyperion. However, you are basically at that point being carried, because you're not really going to be able to deal any damage to anything. For dungeon floors like floor 7, despite what people say, people most of the time want a Hyperion or better. What I mean by that is a Hyperion, or even better, a Terminator. And for a Terminator, you need Enderman Slayer 7, which sometimes could prove even more difficult than getting the coins to the Hyperion. And I guess that's why the desire and the demand for this weapon is still so high, even though the price is so high. At the end of the day, people need Hyperions or Witherblades. It is, after all, such a powerful weapon. Now, there's been rumours flying around that the Hyperion is going to be nerfed for quite a while now. And I guess the reasoning behind that is the Hyperion is too overpowered. And there's a few different ways you can look at that statement, really. First of all, for a lot of activities, there's not really anything that competes for Hyperion. So if there's nothing that competes, then of course it's going to be overpowered. So for things like Kudra and for like floor 7 and a lot of other activities, there needs to be something up there with the Hyperion that can compete and make the Hyperion not the most overpowered weapon in the game. On the other hand, you could argue if the Hyperion was nerfed quite substantially to a point where it just really wasn't viable, then people would find alternatives. At the same time, after all, one of the main ingredients for Hyperion is a Necron's handle. Forget the scrolls for now because they're not supposed to be the main ingredients, let's be real. A Necron's handle, you've got a very, very slim chance of dropping a Necron's handle. This item is supposed to be expensive. And the same goes for these scrolls. So I don't see what the big issue is. There's no wonder it's the best weapon in the game. It's obviously implemented to be one of the best weapons in the game because of how rare the 4 elements you need, well, so drastically to actually craft it. Like the scrolls and the Necron's handle, they're not actually there to be easy to get. They're supposed to be difficult to drop. And obviously that's for a reason. Now before we go any further, you should subscribe to the channel, become part of the 24%. Also, you should join the Discord server, it's linked in the description of every single video. The same goes for a Judgment Core. Obviously there's a reason for the Terminator being so expensive, and that's because this is so difficult to drop. And that's only so difficult to drop because they knew how good the Terminator was going to be. Also, you've got to question, if the Hyperion is actually nerfed, will the price even drop? The Hyperion will almost need to be killed for the price to drop. Even if the Hyperion is nerfed to the point where there is a noticeable difference, it might still not drop in price. And that's just because there's nothing close to it. Now, supposedly they were testing the Hyperion being nerfed on the alpha server. The alpha server was up yesterday, and today when I came to try it out, of course, it's now shut. That's just my luck. However, that's besides the point. I heard from a couple of people who tested it and they said, yeah, it feels a bit different and a bit off, but nothing drastic. Now, of course, at the moment, a big issue of the Hyperion is the fact that it's so expensive and quite inaccessible for a lot of people. Once again, this is the way it's always been. Inflation at the moment has just basically amplified the numbers. When the Hyperion was first introduced and the handle was 400 mil, everyone was like, the handle's 400 mil, so maybe the whole Hyperion is going to cost you like 500 to 600 mil, that's ridiculously expensive. Obviously times have changed and back then the value of money was much greater. However, if the aim of nerfing the Hyperion is not only to make it, I guess, less demanded and less OP, they could make it a little bit less OP, but I don't think it'll make a big difference, but in terms of less demanded, it's not a bad idea. You'd think if the Hyperion is nerfed, it will drop in price. Once again, I'm just not sure if that's going to happen unless they completely wipe it off the face of the earth to a point where it's that bad. Now, this made me think of something interesting. Okay, what if, this isn't going to happen, this is a complete hypothetical, but what if they got the Hyperion and just completely got rid of it? I mean, I don't want to actually get rid of it, that would be quite devastating. But what would Skyblock look like right now without a Hyperion? And that's basically taking into account that everything else is the same. There isn't a new weapon that replaces the Hyperion. So once the meta's gone, what happens? Well, I guess things aren't content locked behind one weapon. people would have to find alternatives. At the same time, I think it would make things like Kudra a lot more sort of end game. Now don't get me wrong, you can't start Skyblock profile and immediately do a Kudra if you were given a Hyperion. You wouldn't even be able to access the Crimson Isles. But what I mean in the moment is you can take a semi-decent profile, give it a Hyperion, and it'll be able to do Kudra quite comfortably. However, if you were to take that same semi-decent profile and get rid of the Hyperion, they'd really struggle. Things like mini-bosses in the Crimson Isles and the Crimson Isles altogether, you pretty much need a Hyperion. You're going to need a Hyperion at some point, and you're going to need a Hyperion throughout. So I would think that basically just the basic requirements to actually compete in the Crimson Isles would go up in terms of skill average, gear, and so on. Which I don't personally think would be a great thing. I mean, activities and areas wouldn't be content locked behind a specific weapon or item, but rather behind specific profile requirements. I guess with different alternatives, things would probably become a lot more skill-based. At the moment, anyone can use a Hyperion. You get it, and you right-click, and that's pretty much it. It's not difficult to use a Hyperion. It's probably one of the easiest weapons to use in the game. You don't even have to be accurate. With the bow, you have to be somewhat accurate. With a weapon, with the sword, you have to be somewhat accurate. No, just right-click somewhere near an enemy, and that's it. Now, in regards to the Hyperion nerf, I really do think it will take something truly drastic to change this item being so overpowered. I mean, let's be honest. If they cut the damage by this thing by 50%, people are still going to use it. Yeah, it's going to be annoying, and it might almost feel like your explosions are now just turning into, I don't know, like popcorn popping. But it would still be usable. I'm not even sure whether it would drop in price that much. I think it would take something like implementing a cooldown in between each right click. Of course, at the moment you can just spam it. But maybe if they implemented a cooldown where if you right click and, you know, at that point you're not even nerfing the Hyperion. You'd be nerfing just a scroll, which is Implosion. And if they did that, would this weapon even be usable at all? Probably. What I'm trying to say is, without making the weapon absolutely terrible to a point where you do like 10% of the current damage, I still think it's going to be the best option for a lot of the things. Who knows? Let me know what you think in the comments. What would they have to do to actually make the Hyperion so unusable? I don't know, I just can't see them doing something that drastic to a point where it makes a big change. Anyway, that's going to just about wrap up today's video. I hope you all have enjoyed. If you have, make sure you do leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one.